Isak Burstro, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell me about Rhythmic Visions.
Right. So Rhythmic Visions is a company with a fairly complicated name to spell that I founded. I was I was I've been always been like testing different ways to run my company or be employed and try different things, and I was employed for some time, and I really felt like I need to take the next step for myself. And I had like an enskild firma, like an I don't know, like it's not an LLC as it is in the English term. It's like a simpler way to drive a company, to run a company in Sweden. I had that for like many years, alongside with like being employed and different kind of occupations that I had. But I kind of felt that I wanted to go wholeheartedly into running my own show, so to speak. So I quit my employment, and then I started this company called Rhythmic Visions. And the reason for the complex name is that I wanted it to circulate around exactly that, like rhythmical visions. And I've been working with visuals for a long time. I've been doing a lot of experiments with video, and I really like the meeting point between audio and video. And in some way, I see video as in the same sense as audio. I think it can express similar feelings, and it can express and work in similar ways that audio do. And when you look at it in a technical term, I mean, it's frequencies and it's vibration, it's movement. You have the color, the vibrations of color. You have the vibrations of tones and sound. It's really not that different. It's just that we perceive it with different sensors or different inputs in our minds and our consciousness. So that's always been intriguing for me, and I've done visuals for a long time, and with doing visuals I mean being like a VJ, so to speak, putting up a projector and running like live projections with live video effects that I control with some controller, probably like together with a band or a musician or some club or something, so that it's running to and with music. So this was like the inspiration that I had in my heart, and wanted to express more and build something around. So therefore I chose to term the company Rhythmic Visions. And yeah, and I kind of regret the name in one way, because I misspelled rhythmic the first time I created my logo. And it's very long. So next time I'm gonna create a company, it's gonna be a shorter name. But I really love my company, and I put up some like 3 products under the name, and the main product of Rhythmic Visions is Orchestra, and Orchestra is like the flagship product of Rhythmic Visions. And it's a live visual application for Mac OS. So it's been born out of my own experience with a lot of different VJ programs, and especially one called VDMX, which is a really amazing application. It's similar to like maybe Ableton Live for those who are interested in music, or like a modular synthesizer, where you can really be free and connect everything to everything and create your own living video application. You can rebuild the whole UI in the application if you want. So I've loved that, and I've used it a lot, but I kind of felt that I had my own ideas on how I wanted an application to work. So So I've been working as a programmer for like all my life. I've always been very interested in the technical aspect of life, and it's been like a fairly natural path for me to work with computers in that way. So that's been my like kind of my work life, so to speak. I've done a lot of client work with programming. So it's been born out of that, like the wish and the longing for a better application that fits my needs as a visual artist, and also like the what can you say, like the like sometimes you just want to take on yourself a project that feels like, can I handle this? Is this gonna be, can I do this? It's a big thing. It's a complicated thing, but I'm gonna try. And that's like how I felt going into orchestra. I just started, and then I kept on going, and I felt it was so fun, so I went all the way.
So did you start that from scratch? Like, because I've seen you have had for quite a few years an application for like phones, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so and that's actually something that I started building before I founded Rhythmic Visions. So I created these smaller like video applications for mobile, and that kind of grew out of just experiment, and I was doing some work with Apple's like the Apple's native programming language Swift, and I found it really fun to work in. And then I kind of just got the idea that maybe I can do something inspired of this VDMX workflow that I really like, but just that it can be handheld. So the first one that I released was called just VFX Live. No, just VFX. Sorry. And the concept of that was just that you can stack a bunch of effects after each other, and then so you maybe put a kaleidoscope, and you put like some filter that makes the picture like an oil painting, and then you can connect these different parameters of each effect to, say, the gyroscope of the phone, or to the audio input, or different kind of things. So you can create really intriguing patterns and cool effects in that. So that was like the first product that I put out there, and it was really a big thing to go all the way and release it, and I was proud of that. And then I had this. I've always like loved music as well, and I have this. I can show you, like this SP404. I love this one. I had it for I don't know how many years, and it's so immediate. Like it's super immediate to use. You just punch the buttons and you get the sound, and you can like punch in effects and just play with it. It's really like an acoustic instrument, so to speak. It's very direct.
Is it a synth or a drum machine, or?
It's a sampler. So I would say it's a drum machine in that sense. Like you put on your favorite drum samples, and then you just hammer on it, and it's a lot of fun. And then it has this whole different approach where some artists have gone like a long way to create their whole albums on just that. So the workflow is that you resample your own. You play something, and it internally records what you play, and then you get that as a little audio file, and then you resample that again, and you like build slowly up your track like that. So it's a very cumbersome and weird workflow where you don't really have any screen. You just like have this this digit screen that can show very simple information. So you gotta listen to your ear, and I think that's like the thing that I really like about it, that you don't get lost in the UI. You don't get lost in, like, you just listen and you work with that. And I liked like the layout of the pads. So that was what I was thinking, like maybe that could work for video as well. So it started like an experiment where I like had a layout of some pads where you can press the pads and it would record video onto that pad, and then you could like play with those videos and like trigger them by tapping on the screen. so that was how the next app was born, was called Jamcam. And it kind of took a different direction later, where the with the actual like workflow was different, and the pads, they triggered effects instead of like triggering video. So but it's a cool it's a really cool project as well. And I think what I wanted to do initially was like create a very simple app, but turns out it became very complex in the end anyway. Like, it's always like this hard, I think, in when you're building an application, you have to balance this ease of use and to take into consideration that people are coming from a different direction than yourself, and that maybe, like, for me, something is very self-explanatory since I built it, so I know exactly where to find everything. But for somebody who's coming in fresh into the project, it's a whole different thing. Like, it's then this button doesn't do it what you think it would do, and you don't know about these other features. So that's always been like the core,
the crux, maybe.
Yeah, the crux of building an application that's usable for more people than myself, in my opinion.
So let's maybe focus on Orchestra, because that's the latest one, I guess.
Yeah.
I have a bit of an understanding how, like, synthesis works with audio.
Right.
But like video seems very foreign to me. Or is it more like a sample thing? You mentioned that, or can you explain like how kind of it works?
I would say, like, to go into that,
like, does it generate things from scratch, or does it always rely on input, or?
It can do both. The core of video is working with something that's called shaders, and shaders is something that's being run on the graphic card, and that's like, I think the graphic cards in computers has been playing a much bigger role the later time, because it's just like being used for blockchain stuff and a bunch of different things than maybe what it was intended to be used for in the beginning. But the cool thing with the shader and the, like, how the graphic card works is that you can, like, build a little bit of a code and program that runs one time for every pixel on the whole like image that is being processed by the graphic card. So basically, when you write a shader, you write an equation. So you write a mathematical equation that in the end will output a color on that pixel. So it's responsible for one pixel on, say, a 128 by 128 image. It will loop through every pixel on that image, and the result of the equation, that is the shader, will be the color that pixel has. And so that's kind of how a shader works in very simplistic terms. The shader, like graphical programming, is a bit of it's a whole universe in itself, and it's been a lot of, like, you can say a lot of things there, but in layman terms, like, that's maybe like the core of it. So what Orchestra does is that it's relying on shaders to both generate effects and like symbols and forms and whatever. And I mean, that's basically what a synthesizer is. Also a mathematical equation. Like, you have the sine wave. Like, the sine wave is a mathematical expression. You have the square wave. That's also like a mathematical expression in a way. Like, it's 1 and 0, 1 and 0, 1 and 0. So I would think of it maybe like that. And the thing with Orchestra is I wanted it to kind of hook into the whole open source world of the internet, and that's something that I care about, and I've been brought up in, and I really admire and respect as a way of building things. And there is, like, what VDMX did, and Vidvox, the company behind VDMX, the program that I kind of was inspired by. they created their own shader language, was called ISF, and or like it's maybe a shader format. The thing with that is that they put out this whole universe of shaders that people can create, and they can go in there. It's like a website where you can go in and you can program your own shader, you can remix other people's shaders, and you can create your own video effects. So this is kind of how I learned programming for graphics. Like you can go in there and open up a kaleidoscope effect, and you can see how it's built, and it's quite simple, relatively speaking. I mean, there are super complex shaders, but they're like just mirroring the image. That's a quite simple effect. So you can like kind of start slow and build your way up. And so the Vidvox created this whole universe of shaders, and I wanted Orchestra to kind of be able to work with that and be a part of that ecosystem. So Orchestra hooks into that place, which is called editor.isf.video for those who are interested. So you can kind of fetch effects from that whole open source place. So you have I don't know, thousands and thousands of effects and generators that you can use. So you can create like basically anything from that. And then you have, of course, a lot of inputs, as you say. Like you can connect for an effect. For if say you have a kaleidoscope effect, then maybe you have some parameters on that kaleidoscope. You have how many divisions of the image will it be split into. So you connect that parameter to, say, a MIDI controller. So when I turn this knob here, it's gonna affect that. Parameter. Or maybe you connect it to the audio input or something else.
So it can be integrated with both, like I guess what is MIDI? It's just some sort of information, and also like the waveform of the sound.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess you control all those things as well. Like how is, for example, the beat gonna talk to the certain shader or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. So there's like this built-in part of Orchestra which listens to the audio. If you put in an like either if you connect your microphone or like external input, maybe you connect your synthesizer, and then it divides that audio into a bass spectrum and a treble spectrum. So you can get you can connect then the kaleidoscope effect to the bass spectrum. So whenever the bass kicks in or the kick or something, is going to react more specifically to that part. So that's how the signal gets worked with in Orchestra.
And I've seen like how does it I guess speak to when you like input like a clip or something, because I've seen things like almost looks like kind of a boomerang, if you remember that old Instagram thing.
Yeah.
All that can be manipulated as well, I guess, in some.
Yeah, that's a new feature that I've been working with. Like we have a small community. It's small. It's growing. It's a nice like some people that are really interested in Orchestra have created like a Telegram group where we just hang out, and someone was like, I want to control like the playback of the video. I was like, yeah, that's cool. I'll look into that, and I got like that as a driving force behind starting to build more around video playback. So if you put in a video file that you have the seek head, like where in the video it's playing. So I kind of started to work with that, like so that could be controlled by something. Like maybe you have an LFO, and the LFO is it's a way of manipulating a parameter. Maybe that's too complicated to explain, but like you have a signal that's slowly changing or fast, and it can go like in a sinus curve, so it goes like up and down like in a circular fashion. So you could connect that to the playhead, and then like the video would like go forward and backward and forward and backward. So I started a little bit with that, and then I saw some guy creating a really cool video on Instagram. It was a friend who sent it to me, and had just that effect where it just randomly jumped around in the video and looped different parts of it, like playing back and forth different parts of the video. So I was like, wow, that's a really amazing effect. I want to see if I could build that into orchestra. So based on that, I kind of took that whole concept a little bit further and made it possible to manipulate both the playback of the video, but also so that it could shift and offset the video playback just by a little, so that you could jump to a part in the video and then it would just like slowly move that part a little bit forth and back, or it could move it however you want. You connect everything to parameters, so you can move it with audio. But yeah, that's going into details, maybe too much.
So for someone using this, let's say in a live like music environment,
right,
would you say that they set the thing up and then they just focus on their music, or are they like doing both, kind of playing the visuals and playing the music as well?
Yeah, I think you could do both. I think that the most common thing is that there's someone who's really interested in the visual part and who's doing just that. Like he or she would just have a controller set up and be like kind of part of the band playing with them. But I know a lot of like mostly electronic musicians who already have kind of their live workflow. You could basically, if you already have all these controllers set up, you maybe connect just that controller to orchestra as well. So when you run a fader up and down in your controller, maybe you control the volume of a track. Maybe that also controls the intensity of an effect in orchestra. So I would say you could totally do both.
And then you maybe like develop presets and stuff like that. So it's not,
yeah. So you would kind of do a lot of like work pre-hand, but I mean that you would have to do that for your audio live set as well. So I guess it goes like it's the same concept.
You talked a bit about it, but I'm quite interested in it because it's first of all a certain kind of person I feel like in music, which I'm most at home in, who mess with like synths and are really, you're either obsessed with it or you're kind of like I don't really care too much. Yeah. But also the video thing, and maybe we'll start there. The integration between the two. Why is that so intriguing?
Yeah, I think. I don't know why, actually. It's just something that I explored in my early 20s, I think, and I just found it so fascinating. And the more I go into it, the more I think it's really it's an interesting subject to dive into, to understand like the concept in sound and trying to translate it to video. For example, if you have a reverb, like an echo or a reverb on a sound, like what would that be in video? So from that I've tried to like translate things and see how they can kind of both inspire each other, because I can do something I can learn something about how we perceive these vibrations in video, and then I'm like, oh, okay, this is also the same thing in sound. Like if I put too much stuff in the video, like it's so much happening, I kind of miss the whole point of it. So in the same sense, I can kind of come back to when I'm in like musical production and try to like not get too messy, just tone it down, try to create like this base plate, like the foundation, the backdrop of the video, of the audio. I work a lot with textures in video, like some small noise, some small things that happens so that you get like this feeling that the image isn't dead, it isn't still. And I kind of feel like the same thing happens in audio, like in a musical track, when you have these little small atmospherical things that's happening around you. You kind of just dive into that whole track. Like, but if it's sterile and it's dead and it's just like, doom, tch, doom, tch, then it's missing something. It's missing that glue that gets it all together. So I get a lot of like inspiration from going into both worlds, and since I think they kind of express the same thing, but just in different angles.
Maybe it's because we're obviously like in general fascinated by both, and then like merging the vocabularies, making it one, in the same sense that we always try to it doesn't really feel meaningful to create something that doesn't talk to some aspect of our emotional being or something like that. Like when I sit at a piano and improvise, let's say, and all of a sudden I find something, it's because it kind of relates to that, like, oh, this is very melancholic, or this is very ecstatic, or something.
Yeah. And it's also been something, I think, this drive to connect these two worlds, I think we've done it for a very long time. There are people back in the 1800s, I think, that just tried to create like this audio-visual piano or whatever, like, and connect like color to sound and tone to sound, like what, the vibration of C or A, like in a classical musical terms, like what does that correspond to when you translate it to the vibrations of light? Because like the color of red is also a set vibration, like it has a specific hertz that it's vibrating on. So there is this connection already, and I think it's just something that we try to. I think, isn't that like the mystery of nature, that the things that we're seeking is already there. We're just rediscovering it. I mean, that's a classical thing. All the things that we're finding out, they're potentially already there. Like building all these crazy things that we've been building, like the potential for it is already there. It's built into the whole world that we experience. And the things that we will find out in the future, we could have found out about that already now. Like the people, in 50,000 years ago, like we could have built what we have today, probably, because the potential for everything is already there. It's just that the intelligence working with that just has to come up to level to understand it. So I think that's the driving force. Like we know there is something there. I feel there's something interesting between audio and video. There's something interesting between, and it's not audio and video exactly. It's more like it's something between sound and light, to be more like esoteric about it.
Right. Yeah, because it's, I guess, shouldn't get too deep into the physics, because I don't quite understand the whole like particle versus wave form thing. But like you said, it's really only a question of medium. Like light, we think of that in terms of frequency, just as we think of sound.
Right.
It's just that light is very, very much faster.
Right. It's just like a faster vibration.
And then we call it rhythm, but that is the same thing as tone, actually.
Yeah.
Like if you take your favorite beat and then speed it up a bunch, you're gonna find a harmony there. Might not sound very nice, maybe it does, but it's the same thing.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's kind of insane.
Give me 1 second. I have to connect. My charger. I have 3%.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, I made it.
Great. Yeah, very fascinating. I don't know if you know about Adam Neely.
No.
He's like a music theory nerd, jazz YouTuber guy.
Right.
He had a talk about this. I think it was Newton he talked about, who actually did the connections between like frequencies and light. How like octaves are multiples of one another, and then he was like, "Oh, this and the like C sharp is blue or whatever."
Right.
Kind of funny. You should check it out.
Yeah. There's also this guy called Walter Russell who did really cool things with, but it's more about light and how he tried to basically create this unified theory of life and vibration and how it all ties together. And I think he deserves way more credit than he's got. So I encourage everybody to check him out. Like, created these amazing artworks, and he got like inspirations from I don't know where, but he had these visions that he saw light and colors from a whole different dimension, and he kind of like, it just clicked for him. He just like got it, and then he spent his whole life trying to explain what he saw. And it's a lot about this kind of octave, like how things go in octaves, and that is like repeating but in higher frequencies, and that it has this kind of sinus curve again, like this wave shape way of evolving, like and also like the importance of the spiral, like the spiral which like it's constantly evolving. Like the spiral has this quality of going like in a circular fashion, but it's constantly moving at the same time forward. And we can think of ourselves like moving in that spiral fashion. Like every year we go around these seasons. Like for example, now it's winter in Sweden, and it's gonna be winter again. Like in a year, we've gone full circle, but we moved forward in time at the same time. So it's like we have this circular movement, but we're going forward. So we're like, as a species, we have this natural movement of the spiral. You can also see it in like the simplest life form, like or not the simplest, maybe they're kind of complex, I guess, like the flies and moths. When they see a light bulb, like they go towards that light, and they're gonna go in a spiral fashion. So they kind of move like this, and they fly up to the light, and then they smash into the light, and then it goes like a straight line down, boom. So I think like the spiral really has something, a very interesting and like deeply meaningful shape. It's like it's a universal shape. I mean, the whole the like the golden ratio and everything is connected to the spiral, as you know. I mean, it's something that we really can learn from, I think.
Yeah, those are truly like bananas and mind-blowing every time when you stumble upon like the golden ratio, and then they put the diagram over a lot of plants or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like or even wind, what is it called? Like how wind looks from very far away.
All right.
Or weather patterns. They're all spiral, and galaxies. Oh,
yeah.
It seems like most things.
Right. So it's kind of like this thing that it exists already. Like that is what we are. We are built of this awesome, amazing geometrical patterns, and it's already there. Like we're just trying to understand it. We're just trying to get our hands around it. It's already working. I think it's a fascinating thing, both with like when you speak of math and you speak of like, I'm going to jump subject a little bit, but like in school, for example, I've always been like frustrated when I grew up a little bit and learned about these things, and I got really fascinated with it, that why is this not a bigger part of what we learn in school? That, for example, when somebody is not interested in math, I can totally get that, because what you learn in math is usually like the multiplication tables, like in the earlier years, and then you get into some simple geometrical stuff, but then you just go forward into, I don't know, math that's more,
it's practically
minded.
minded.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, you're just preparing for maybe getting better to read the stock market or whatever. It's like math for like algebra, and you just, I'm not gonna spit on that too much, because I think it's a lot of good things as well. But I just wish that there were more connections between like the math that is in nature, like the geometrical math, like the very simple thing of the philosophical concept of math, like what is 1, what is 2, like what does that mean? You could talk about just the number 2 for an hour, 2 hours. You could talk about the number 3. What does that mean? Like when you have 1, you just have a dot. You have 2, you have a line. When you have 3, you have a triangle, like you have a direction. When you have 4, you have a cube, like, so the 4 and the cube is connected. What does that mean? Like those simple things, like the 5, you have the pentagram. You have the 6, you have the double, like the double triangles, like the 2 opposite forces. It's a whole study in itself, and that's been something that, like, that's, I don't know, in the occult studies and in the esoteric studies, that's like base stuff. Like that's, I mean, it's sacred math, it's sacred geometry and sacred math as well. But I think those things are natural in us. It's what we, it's a lot closer to what we are than reading like the stock market in math. That's it becomes so abstract. It becomes so far away from what we are. So I just wish that we would get back to the core concepts of it.
I study philosophy like intermittently, and one of the things I think about when you talk about numbers and the philosophical aspect is the argument quite often when they talk about like reality. I'm gonna attempt this. I can't quite like put it together, and they want to find an essence kind of. And one of the argument is that like numbers as abstractions can be more real than the actual thing. Like so 2 is an abstraction, but it is in a sense more real than 2 apples because it's more universal. It's like 2 can be 2 pens, 1 pen and 1 apple, but
Right.
2 apples can only be that.
Right.
So it's a more fundamental thing.
It's like
Is
an
that-
archetype.
Yeah, kind of. Is that what you're pointing to when you say sacred? Like,
Yeah, I think so. I think like I think I'm pointing toward like my brother who also was part of this show, and I really enjoyed that that episode. It was I love him. We're such a like, we're very similar and also like polar opposites in one way, and he has this kind of fun expression that he told me about, like how he's very, very Aristotelical. I don't know if that's how he term it, and I'm more Platonic. So I'm more in this archetypical world, the world of idea, and I guess that's where this concept of the sacred number lives, like the concept of the 2, like the symbol of 2, and I guess the core of the 2, the core of 3, and what that is as a symbol. And for me, that symbol is a geometrical symbol. So 2 is for me 2 dots, and it could also be a circle divided by a line, so you have 2 halves. So it's like this more. It's like when you do like a study of dreams. If you go into dreams and you have the dream, like it's maybe you're walking with your bicycle to the store, and you walk with your bicycle into the store, and there you meet some friend who gives you an apple. Say, I just made that dream up. I never dreamt that. So on the surface level, like you have the bike and you have the friend and you have the apple. Okay, maybe that tells the story. But what the dream is trying to tell you, because the dream is this like language of the subconscious, and the subconscious or the unconscious it has the vocabulary of symbols. So like the bike is not just a bike, it's a symbol of something. So then you got to dig into that. What does the bike represent? It represents movement, it represents balance, it represents maybe youth, it represents like force. So you have all these kind of symbolical meanings, and the symbolical meaning is the thing that lives in the archetypical world, or the deeper roots of our minds. So you got to go beyond the surface level and go into that world, and that's the world of dreams. That's the world of visions. That's the world of archetypes, and maybe that's also the sacred world. It's the world which we also like. It's not that far away. We dream every night. I think that's what's so interesting with dreams. Like we have this idea of the unconscious as something that's very far away from us, like the concept of symbols and the Platonical world. That's it's such an abstract thing. Like it's nothing real, really. But every night we go into that world, and that world is affecting us during the day too.
And it seems to be an absolute necessity. If you don't sleep, if you don't dream, you don't last for long.
Totally.
We need to spend a substantial amount of time in the archetypal, in the story, in the unconscious. We don't really know why, but we don't last if we don't. It's interesting that we don't remember much of it, or at least I don't. I'm not a particularly like visionary person in the sense of like seeing things clearly. I guess I'm more of an auditory person. Like I can kind of hear things, or mostly hear language, maybe thinking language very much, not so much an image. But yeah, I don't know. How are you with that? You seem like a very, very visually like inclined person.
Yeah, I guess.
I guess what I'm wondering about is how vivid it is.
I think it has like two parts. The awake personality of me is very driven by the visual aspect. I think when I look at a painting, I get this impulse of what it needs. Like I can feel that. I feel like here I need to have red here. It needs to be orange here. Or if I draw a line, I feel like, okay, I have to counter this line with this line because it needs this balance. So it's a natural dance. And audio has always been more complicated for me. There is also a part where this is also like where me and my brother are different, because I think he's very, very natural in the audio world. Like when he plays the guitar and when he plays the piano, he plays differently than what I do. And sometimes I listen to him and I just feel like he's surfing that wave of audio. He's like he's in it in a different way than I am. I'm more like looking at it. So, and I think different things are born out of that. So I guess in that sense I'm much more visually inclined. And then then you have the dreams, and the dreams, I think everybody has dreams. It's more about the attention you put to it. So those kind of visions, it's not that I get like a clear vision in the day, like in that sense. The visions for me is something I get during the night when I sleep.
And would you say it's because when I look back upon it and like try to remember or recount, or even just after the experience, it still seems quite far from reality in terms of how vivid it is, how like
you're talking about dreams.
Yeah.
Well, I think the dream is so interesting because it slips away from us the moment we awake. So you gotta have a technique to keep the dream, and the technique is to write it down. It's the way. I mean, that's how you.
What about in the experience itself? Does it seem far from like actual being, or is it?
You mean like
kind
that?
of, yeah.
Yeah, that's the interesting part with dreams. I think it takes place in, like, in our reality we're kind of locked in time, right? But we can move freely in space. Okay, so we have this kind of connection between space and time, right? I think in the dream world, it's the other way around. We can move in time, but we're kind of locked in space, more or less. Like, you as a person, you can't move. Like, you could just go start there. Like, the dreamer is lying in his or her bed. Like, you're not moving. You're fixed in the position. You're in your mind, and you're moving around in time. So, for example, like, when you think of a dream, usually it's this kind of weird jumps in dreams, like where you're at one moment you're inside this big house. Next moment you're in a car. Next moment you're out of the car and you're on a road talking to some friends. And next moment you're like waiting for the train. It's not so much like that you walk from place to place and that you have this more linear space movement that you have in the conscious life, in the awake life. So I think that's why it differs. That's at least my theory of it.
We talked a bit about painting. I wanna ask you a bit about that more. You spend a fair bit of time with street art and murals and stuff like that. Are you doing that still?
No, I wouldn't say I do it. I think that would be a lie. I think part of me still loves it, but I don't really find the time for it. But yeah, I mean, growing up in a very artistic family, I got very like inspired to draw, and both my mother and father, they were like very enthusiastic for me to draw, and they gave me a lot of like pens and paper, and I loved drawing since I was a kid, and I just kept on doing it for a long time. I just didn't stop doing it because I think that's what a lot of people do. We all draw when we were kids, right? But then we stop drawing for some reason. Maybe we're not being told that we're good, or something's happening, so we just I'm not gonna draw anymore, or start comparing ourselves with others or whatever. But I just didn't stop, and I love drawing. And then when I was older, I think like when I was 16 something, living in Järna, which like in Sweden, which had a lot of really, really amazing graffiti artists, I got so inspired by that. There were these amazing like faces that were painted, and these objects, and also the lettering, and I just found that very intriguing. And I've been coming from the skateboard culture a lot, and I always liked the street hip hop kind of culture. So graffiti was kind of, it just felt right. It just felt like in my path, and it was just like, it just gave a whole lot of different meaning to my drawing. So when I was like a teenager, I just found this way to show my work by like doing a cool painting outside. Obviously that was not very something that my parents thought was a very good idea, so we had our argues about that. But yeah, then it kind of went on, and I've always been more of a like, I painted a lot of faces and characters, and I was not just really a classic graffiti painter maybe. and I did a lot of street art, did a lot of these like put up posters, and when I did a lot of commuting in the commuter trains, I just took down the advertisement, the big like papers, the advertisement papers, and on the back side of that, it was just like this blank paper, and I had this commute to my high school, and it was like an hour of a commute. So I knew I had like, okay, I have 1 hour to draw something. So I just took that down and I drew, and I tried to fill the whole area in this hour and just make it like a really complete painting. And then I put it back up with my painting facing outward. So that was a really fun thing that I did a lot. So I kind of got into more and more of this rhythmic painting, like to go back to rhythmic visions. It's like, I think graffiti has something. The thing that graffiti really has is it's both the kind of collaborative thing, like you paint in a group, you paint together. I think that's a beautiful thing, just like out of itself. If you take that out of the context of it being illegal and everything around that, that's you can have a lot of opinions about. But the concept of just painting together, I think, was really, really cool. And also the concept of drawing something with your muscle memory. And that for me changed my way of painting. So I'm very thankful for the whole, like, the graffiti period in my life, because it taught me to draw with confidence. Because when you do, like, if you're gonna do like, for example, the paint, to do that painting in the train on the advertisement poster, or if you're outside in the night and you're just gonna do this painting and it's very stressful, you can't stand and just like do a little by little. You just gotta be confident and like, okay, here goes this line, here goes this line, and you gotta get it into your muscle memory. So that's why you do a lot of sketching, you try your characters and you try your different symbols until you just got it. And I think that's where it becomes very similar to music. Like, you learn these licks, you learn these patterns, so you can improvise with them, so you can be free with them. You got to get it into your body so you can just flow with it. And I think that's a part of life. That's like how dance works. That's how we work. Like, I listened to your other conversation with what was his name, the Waldorf teacher, Jens, yeah. About, and I think you said something there about like like that language is such a good symbol of that. Like, we just we learn to do the you said it much better, like we learn to do the, yeah, you can say it yourself.
Maybe you're thinking about how, like, you could learn vocabulary in stop time to be able to use it in real time.
Yeah,
something like that.
Exactly. And I think that's a part of how we work, right? Like, so that's been influencing like drawing for me. So I learned these different symbols. Like, I learned like how I do an eye or a nose or just an abstract shape. So I get these shapes and then I have them in my hand, and then I can just flow with them. It's not it's something that I do fast, and the faster I do it, I think the better usually it gets as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I wanted to ask about that style, because I feel like it's pretty unique, with the faces and the colors, and you did a bit of, like, a lot of cutouts as well with a similar style. I don't know what to call it. It's kind of like, it's almost tribal in a way, I feel like. What do you think? Who are your main influences, would you say?
I would say Henri Matisse is one of the biggest influence, I think, or just a big. I have a lot of respect for Henri Matisse, and he was the one, like, just working with cutouts as a concept. And I think the beautiful thing with cutouts is that you get the really raw colors. Like, you get a red which is really, really red, and then you can match that with another color, so it becomes musical in that sense that you can just like place these two very vibrant colors together, and you can just feel like if they sit or not. And if they don't sit, you just put out that color and put in another color. when I draw, I usually use a lot of ink, and then when you put down red, you don't put it out. Like, it's there. It's going to be there. I guess when you paint acrylics, it's a different story because you can paint over, but it's a longer process. Like when you work with cutouts, you can really work with color and match it in a very direct manner. So I think for me, Matisse was just like, he dedicated his whole life to that. So that's been inspiring. And then of course, like both my mother and father, I think they're both inspiring. Like my dad, because of his discipline with painting, is painting like all the time, is still painting. He's always been painting. So and I really love his like way of working with textures. He has like this really rich paintings, and my mother's been more interested in form, or both I guess been that, but she's done a lot of ceramics and this kind of organic shapes, and that's been something that I got inspired by too. But then like other artists, I guess, yeah, a lot of graffiti artists, of course. Like when I grew up, there are a lot of different graffiti artists that I thought had a cool style, and then you have this whole, just like the world around you with South American patterns I think are really interesting, and African patterns are also really cool. I don't know, I think it just goes from all I just get inspired from all over the place, but in the end it just like melts in myself, and I have, since I've worked with my style for so long now, it's just it's become part of me. I can't get rid of it. It's just like when I do a painting, it's gonna come out in that way. So that can also be a curse in one way. Like sometimes you just want to refresh yourself. Like I just want to draw in a different manner. It can be hard.
Yeah, I find that a lot because I'm quite early in my creating a vocabulary, particularly with music, and I kind of find something where after a month or so of like grueling just discipline, it's not particularly fun. It's like, oh, finally I can flow a bit in this because I've kind of internalized it. But then that's fun for a week maybe, and then you have to do do the other part again.
Yeah, it's always bit like you bounce between those kind of just working, and trying to find something new, and then you find it, and then becomes these really good work, like artworks or musical pieces. I think for me it's been one in 10 or 1 in 20 that I really been like happy with, and I do a lot of small sketches. I like now I work a lot like with consultant, like I do some client work, and I have these meetings, and then I just have this really small kind of sketch pad by my computer, so I can just draw a little bit, and when the meeting is boring, I just go into that and just work a little bit there. And so I like to have the smaller format as well, because there's where I can really sketch and find something, and then when I feel confident I go up to a larger dimension.
Show that just for everyone who doesn't click the link below to see at least one thing.
Yeah, so this is just, I don't know, it's not really finished. It's some kind of sketch. I have a bunch of different, like, this is like a lot faster sketch. There's just symbols and texts. There's some face. There's some other symbol. Like this is a symbol that it's really a ceramical piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried to like draw in ceramics as well. So I just put out a big sheet of clay, and then I had this needle, and I just paint in the clay, and then I kind of just let it dry a little bit, and it becomes a ceramical piece like that. So try to find a way to translate that into clay as well.
I've seen a couple of the faces as well in different forms of ceramics.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I think I could explore that more. Right now, I don't have the ceramical studio, so I just I've been pausing it a little bit. But yeah, ceramics is such a different material to work in. It requires so much more of you. Like painting, you just have this paper and you draw a little bit. You're done. Like when you start with a piece of clay, you just start a whole process. Like because it's gonna dry, and then when it's dried to a certain point, maybe then you need to do something. That's very like important in that kind of time of drying, and then you gotta paint it, and then you gotta like burn it once, fire it once, and then you glaze it, and then you fire it the second time, and then you maybe need to polish it finally, and then it's done. So it's like you just open that door, and then you get sucked into that whole process, and you can't escape it. So it requires you. I think ceramics requires you a lot more than drawing does. Drawing is very free.
Two categories of artistic work. One where you get fired if you do it in the meeting, and one where you get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to get away with it.
Probably smart. Let's see. So tell me about another one of your many projects, the Hilma of Klint thing.
Right.
It must have struck you quite deeply to go into it in the way of even making like a documentary about it. So
right. Did you see the documentary?
I saw maybe half a bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Hilma of Klint has been part of my life, actually, in a weird way since I grew up. Because since my father's painter and has been really interested in abstract painting. He was at this early exhibition before she was even famous, and he got like this poster that we had up in our home my whole like when I grew up, and I didn't know about who that was by then. And this touches on like my esoteric interest. So I found some books when I was like 21 maybe. When I talk about these books to friends and family, I usually call them my space books. It's a very, I mean, this is a big subject in itself, but the core concept of it is that there was this group that worked with trance channeling. So they went into a trance state, and they got in contact with some entity that was talking through them in the trance state. This was in the 60s, 70s, and there were some there've been some different like instances of this happening, but I think this has been super well documented, and they did it in a clinical, like a very like. It was the guy who was like steering it. It was a scientist, and it was very clever and bright. So he had this kind of conversation with this entity that was talking through this other woman who was in trance, and he put down like he had like a question and answer with this entity talking through her, and everything was recorded on cassette tapes, and then it was transcribed. This whole transcription was then released like as a book, or as 5 books. And nowadays, like in the I don't know when they did it, but like I guess in the somewhere around 2010 maybe or something, they put up a website where you could read all these transcriptions for free. And I found out about that when I was really interested in the pyramids of Giza, because I had this interest in mathematics and geometry, and I was like, and then you have like the master degree of that is the pyramids of Giza. Like, how did they do it? Like, it's amazing. It's so amazing when you really look into that. Like, it's out of this world, like literally. So I was super interested in that, and I just Googled it, I remember, and I found out these texts, these really esoteric, weird texts that were talking about these pyramids, and they had this kind of very deep, like intelligent language, and the descriptions around how the pyramids were used, and the intentions of it, and the mathematical, like, it was so deep, and it really, really struck me on a level where I was like, wow, these guys know about this shit. Like, they really understand it. And I just kept on reading, and it clicked with me totally. But then when I kept on reading on that text, it started talking about energy centers and consciousness and tarot and planets and unconsciousness and consciousness and the infinite creator that is a part of everyone and everything. And like, it was like this whole big concept of, and the core of it all was like unity, and that we're all actually one big being. There is at one level no separation. So this felt like a bit out of there for me. I was just like very like interested in the pyramids, in the math kind of thing. But I kept on reading, and the part about the pyramid was super interesting, so I just couldn't stop reading about that. And slowly I started reading the other bits as well, and I found them really, really fascinating. So it kind of stuck with me, and it's been the books that I've kept my whole life. I love those books, and it's called The Raw Material, The Law of One. And you can find it on like lawofone.info and just start reading, and it's super deep, and it's super complex, but it has this big, profound spiritual meaning that we're all interconnected, and that we're all part of the same being, that we all are in, like, the consciousness in me, the life in me is the same life that is in you. Like, we're a big tree, and we're all these branches on this tree. So we all have our different, like, the different journey, the journey that we have during a life, maybe as a branch, or maybe as a leaf even. But we're all part of this tree, and we are all the same tree. So this was like the philosophical gist of those books, and yeah, I just keep on reading them because they have so much layers. And then later on, I found out about Hilma when there was this big exhibition at Moderna Museet, and I went to that. It was like 2014, I think. And then I was just blown away, because they had done the same thing. They also had this trans-channeling thing. They got in contact with some entity, or actually multiple entities, as is their own story. And they got messages about, in Swedish, like how we're all one being, how we're all one, and how like love is the foundation of everything. And then a lot of more messages, of course, but like that's the gist of it. So it just clicked with this whole other teaching that I got from this book. And then on top of that, they got these paintings. First it was just automatic sketches. There are these notebooks of when they just sit, like, I guess, blindfolded, and just have this other entity take control of them, and they just make this amazing pictures just automatically. Like, you can see how the hands has just been going and going, and it's so fascinating. And then the next step of that was like to make the big paintings, and they get the questions from these other entities from some other dimension, that they're just like, are you ready to receive this big mission? And they say yes, and they got to work a lot to do it. Like, they got to cleanse themselves, they got to think, like, try to get away their negative thoughts and just get into a good state of being. And they pray a lot, and like they have this whole, like, they have to really commit to that. And they do it, and they receive this huge painting through Hilma af Klint, who becomes the main painter of that, the mission. So when I went to that exhibition, I just got really, really struck by it, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is like, it's, in my opinion, it comes from another world. It comes from another dimension of ourselves. Like, and it's like the thing that they, like the entities that talk through them, say that this is a gift to humanity. This is a gift to humanity for us to understand the evolution that we're going through, and the spiritual evolution, like the unconscious evolution, the evolution that is happening within ourselves. So they have all these different concepts, and I like to read that and see those paintings and connect it with these other books that I have. So that was what was kind of inspired me with Hilma af Klint.
She did a lot of writing as well, right? Have you looked into any of that?
Yeah, there's one book that is called Förberedelsetiden by Gurli Lindén, which is a amazing book, and that's kind of where I really understood the message of it, because I was at the exhibition and you see the paintings, but what's been striking me is that the usual, like, since we're not very, like, in the Western world, we kind of lost our spirituality in a way. Like, we're trying to refine it now, and everybody has their own definition of what it is and how we do it, and I guess, like, we're all on different but maybe the same journey. So I think we've had a tough time to really take in what these paintings are. I mean, when it was presented, it was like presented as this early abstract painter, and she's being like compared to Kandinsky, that she was before Kandinsky as like the first abstract painter, and that's like how she's been shipped to the world, so to speak. But for me, coming from this other angle of like the spiritual message behind it, I just felt like there's a part missing here, and why are we not talking about that? These paintings came through channeling, that these paintings came through some other dimensional beings, because that's like far out. It's really, really hard for us to grasp that. I don't really think that we want to grasp that, because that shatters our way of thinking about reality. So, but I've always been a little spaced in those kind of ways of thinking, and for me it is like that. So I had this is like the way I go into it, and then I found this book, The Förberedelsetiden by Gurli Lindén, and there you can read all the notes that he did, and they have like it's 27,000 pages of notes from these channeling sessions, from these trance state sessions, with messages to humanity. And when I read that, I was like, I've been very touched by it. It's very like spiritual, deep messages, and I would encourage everybody who has an interest in Hilma af Klint, or in the spiritual world, or in like philosophical world, or just inclined to seeking some of the mysteries of life, to read that book, because it's very, very profound, and I think it gives the missing link, or the missing part of the work. And then there's been some issues where, like, there's some economical, like, when she become that superstar, she becomes this like huge persona. I think you can, it's then the materialistic part of life, like you can make a lot of money on that. So it became some issues in the stiftelse, which is trying to like the mission of the stiftelse, which was, that's a whole different story, and I'm not going to go into that now, but they're trying to protect their work, and that it's not going to be sold, basically. But there were some issues there, and we got in contact, actually, me and my partner Elisabeth, with her relatives of Hilma af Klint. So and they told us about the whole situation. Me and Elisabeth did a performance. We did a show about Hilma af Klint's, the message behind Hilma af Klint, and where I did live visuals, and Elisabeth, my partner, who is really interested in the esoteric side of things, she read also this book, and she's did this like live storytelling performance about the message that comes from the other side. And that's how we kind of got in contact with Johan of Klint and Erik of Klint and Hedvig Ersman, who's all relatives to Hilma in different ways. And so it's from there where we heard about this, the issues that they have with the Stiftelse who's protecting the work, and we just felt like we want to do something about it, because I feel it's so important to me personally, and I really don't want it to end up in just like being some kind of asset, like some kind of investor asset. I think you can do economical gain on other things, like there's so much other things, but this is it's a cultural and also spiritual legacy that we have, and I think we ought to protect that. So I did the least thing that I felt that I could do, and Elisabeth as well. Like, so we did this video to just let the family tell their story about it, and I'm very proud of that. But yeah, that's a big story in itself.
What do you mean with this? Because I know it's like a historical sort of movement, kind of, with these words such as esotericism and mysticism, but I don't really have a grasp of it. What does it mean to you?
I think for me it means the inward study, like the study of what we are, and the seeking of what we are, like what is life really. That's, I guess, how I can simplify it as much as I can for me, what it means for me. And there are a lot of people who have had these different studies throughout life. I mean, you have a bunch of sacred texts, a bunch of sacred, like, deep texts that, for me, when I read them, it touches me. It touches the part of me that I feel it's pure and it's real for me. I get moved by it, and I feel that it's true. For example, reading the Upanishads, old ancient texts, or reading, I don't know, you can even read like parts of like the religious text, like the Bible or maybe the Quran, and you can find like portions there that are still true. And then of course it's mixed up with a lot of, I don't know, other human affairs as well. So but the core of it for me is a seeking of that there is something there's a mystery calling from the other side, and or it's not actually the other side, it's like it's a part of us. I think it's a deeper place in ourselves that we yet have to uncover, and I think that's it's a long journey that we're on. Like we have such a short time here on Earth, and we try to do a lot of things, but one of those things I think is to turn the gaze inward a little bit and try to realize what we are and what is life, what is this consciousness that is looking out through me.
You're pointing to the experience. It's like it's just a state, and it's a positive state, maybe the most positive state, and it comes about in interaction with these different things. Can be a text, can be a piece of art that we've talked a lot about, but as you say, it calls, like it points to something beyond that's more worthwhile than anything else, and we try to make it more explicit, like to understand it in some way. And it's very tightly linked to art. Like Esoterica Productions, you have, as a part of your statement, driven to unfold the first cause of everything. And you do that partly through this documentary in celebrating an artist. because their work, like many others of the big minds of history, their works point to this, to the first cause of everything.
The big mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the mystery, I think, is the infinite and the eternal, and that is, I think, something that is very hard to grasp. But the eternal is timeless, and the eternal is, it's everything. And the eternal also means like, or maybe the infinite means that we are all connected. Because if something is finite, it means it has an end. So it means that something stops and another thing starts, right? But if we truly live in an infinite universe, then there can be no stops. Because that would imply that something else starts, right? So I think the big mystery is the infinite. Because the infinite implies that we are all one being, that we are the infinite.
I would say for me it more becomes like the problem that occupies me the most, like, because it seems like it's infinite, or as far as we know it's infinite, but it feels like I'm still finite, you know? How do I play a part in this thing that doesn't end?
And I guess that's like the whole study of the mystery, right?
Yeah, and also the whole artistic enterprise, or intellectual as well. Those are the two things I'm always trying to balance, because they call to me more than anything else. How do I... The best thing I've been able to figure out how to be part of this infinite process that calls to me as being so meaningful is creating beauty, because that will call more people into this enterprise, and truth.
That's beautifully put. There's this artist called Sun Ra that I really admire, and he was a jazz musician. I don't know if you know about him.
I don't think so.
He was all about like the cosmic world and the space age. He was that was his message to humanity. It was like, we're living in the space age now. You gotta get with that. And it was like in the 60s, 70s. He was really before his time. He was like one of the first ones to work with synthesizers in jazz music, and he was a really cool dude. And what he did was just, he would just like gather around a whole big band of musicians, like a big orchestra, and he called it the Sun Ra Orchestra, and that's where orchestra has its name from. So it's like an homage to Sun Ra, and he would basically just play music all the time. Like they would just play, and his like drive for it was just to create this beauty, to create this calling, and to celebrate life, and also to celebrate the mystery, and to, as he would say, like, you play for the creator. And the thing we have got mixed up, I think, like coming from the whole Christian background, is like when we talk about the creator, like I think of some old dude sitting in the clouds, right? But I think the mystical way of looking at the creator is that you are the creator, and you have deep, deep part of you that's looking at you, looking out through you maybe. And that all these things that we do in life, it's a gift. Like we give so much in this life. We can give the culture, the music, all these kind of things as a homage, as this big beautiful thing that we give both to ourselves and maybe also to the creator, a bigger, deeper part of ourselves.
Yeah, that would be the image of God, right? That we've started to call the soul.
Right.
So, yeah. Isak, this has been a blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joel. Really nice to have this beautiful and deep discussions with you.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again soon.
Totally.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.